All right. Come to choose. All right.
Good evening, everyone. Hearing church is so this Sangha Sangha.
So good evening, everyone. Geshe-la had an idea of changing a little bit the setup of the Thursday evening teaching just for today. So since today is Lama Tsongkhapa Day, Geshe-la thought of having a Q&A session, but with a twist. So rather than asking just Geshe-la the questions, also people here and also the people at home can ask the Sangha questions. So as a collective, but also individually, you're welcome to ask questions.
Sangha Solia Anchi Penachawa Ani Chequay Vincent of the Carton Sonsra Ani Tichiri Ani Tachi Mizina Miziman Shuti Mijachin Drawas that Dini to Chawad Anichi Gavia and Chick Mother Contestants and Chimiziki Dano Keva Carton Sons. Dingy, you church this down the chance to range Gavana. The Yamyong Tom range Gavaras, the Logis rather the song to strike.
And Geshe thought of having a sort of an open discussion, a Q&A session, because he thought that it'd be good if also, if you have questions to the Sangha about sharing our experiences, like, for example, the reason for becoming ordained. Or it seems that for most of us, most of the Sangha here, we've been lay people for most of our life. If I guess from the two of you, you already reached the halfway point? More than halfway point. All right. So, but since most of us have spent most of our life as lay people, Geshe-la thought that it'd be also good to just maybe think of or reflect upon the differences between being a lay person and being ordained. If we also can speak about the benefits of being ordained, what we found personally as being beneficial, that could also be a good discussion.
Konzo ani sawa dzukadilaya ani exercise labja touch rabas kuni chingala ani asagi ta ani cheni lelo the yomares inaya yakshi tiris tingi demba shu tonsandra.
So we had a few new nuns that have joined our ranks in the last few months, and before becoming nuns, they went down to Venerable Elsa's place to get the general advice about being monastic. Geshe-la have heard it from one of the nuns, and Elsa said that being a nun is not easy, but that's the best way of spending your life. Do you remember?
Yeah. And I'm just saying, talk arching, talk chair, piano dra, teach general, Kundum Pingrova. Then to say, I'm chicken is and pony. And they say, the Kundus sugar. This is the general.
So Geshe-la thought that since this is the format that he thought of today, said that let's begin with me. Maybe I'll speak about why I became a monk and my experience as a monk. Maybe we should have started with Geshe-la, but anyway. No, I'm just joking. So, now I was asked before, why did I become a monk? And it's hard to think of the point in which the penny dropped and I thought myself, that's it. I need to become a monk, and for the rest of my life, I'll be a monk. So as I encountered Buddhism initially I thought I had a thought at the back of my mind that maybe one day I'll become a monk. But when my parents were still alive, I thought that they would be utterly distressed if I were to become a monk. Because anyway, they thought that I had a career as a software engineer and I was making good money. And they had that dream that I would get married and have 2.2 kids and, like everyone, get a mortgage. So when I left my job and, went to India to study Tibetan, they got really distressed. So I thought that if I were to become a monk, it would be for them like really, really distressful. So I waited. And then when both of them passed away, at some point I thought myself that in terms of the way that I want to live my life, it's in line with the way that monks live. So I thought that remaining a lay person doesn't give me much benefit in terms of taking up ethical discipline and practicing Buddhism and committing to something for the rest of my life. So I thought that in terms of aspiring for higher types of ethical discipline and getting some guidelines in my life, some rules in my life, I thought that would be the best way that I could live my life. So I thought that I knew what it's all about, in a sense that I lived with Geshe Jamang in the same house, the Geshe that was here before Geshe Tsurnim. So we lived together in the same house for quite a few years, and we had quite a lot of discussions and talks about monastics life, and also I translated here and there for teachings of Vinaya. So I thought I knew what it's all about. Then when I went to India, to take ordination with Situ Rinpoche, and when I became a monk, suddenly the whole experience turned out to be very different to what I thought it would be. Well, to begin with, as my previous girlfriend said, I'm not marriage material. She said that, I'm not willing to commit. I'm not marriage material. I'm not relationship material. And as soon as I became a monk, it felt like, oh my God, I'm getting married. It's like being having a commitment for the rest of my life. So I have to say that although I thought what I was into, then when I became a monk and I made that commitment to do it for the rest of my life, suddenly it felt like I got married. So it was a bit of, I guess, unsettling vibe for some time. And I remember that when I went to different places and I happened to be gazing at myself at the mirror, or, sometimes you pass shopping malls and you have your reflections on the window. When I saw myself wearing the robes, I got still surprised that it's really me. So it took me some time, I have to say, to get used to being a monk. But as time went by, I got more and more settled into it. And actually, I found it surprisingly quite liberating in that I no longer have to make excuses for not wanting to do what my family or friends wanted me to do, expected me to do. And also, I think that as far as they're concerned, I can do whatever I want to. So find that, first of all, there is a sense of freedom and liberation in deciding really what I want to do and what's important for me. And I feel that before I had to make more compromises, in a sense that when you hang out with your family and friends and so forth, sometimes you have to make excuses why you don't want to drink or you don't want to do whatever they do. Now I don't have to make excuses. It's more like everyone accepts that, takes that for granted. So I enjoy more personal freedom and personal liberty. And hopefully I'll be able to sustain that for the rest of my life. So I think that's about it. Have you got any questions or? Anyway, one thing that also I wanted to add to that is, I was asked a couple of times before, particularly when I traveled to China and Taiwan, and I was asked if I experienced any personal disaster or crisis that made me become a monk. And I think that, some have that impression that only if you go through a personal crisis and you're looking for salvation or some answers, then you might turn to Buddhism. So it happens to some people, but I think that for many of us, it's probably discovering some other ways of personal freedom, personal liberty without having to go through the bad stuff. Anyway.
You were in the army or something, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. So in Israel, I was born and grew up in Israel, and there's compulsory military service for everyone that reaches the age of 18. So luckily, I had asthma when I was a kid, so I couldn't do any combat stuff. So I joined the army and I got training as a software engineer. And I was with the Israeli army, with Israeli Air Force as a software engineer for 12 years.
So that's sort of like a regulated, you were a few years there, and that's sort of structured and sort of disciplined, I suppose,
yeah.
The environment. And probably, do you think that helped you when you decided to become a monk or not? Or was it reversed?
No, actually, I thought that after having spent so much time in the army, I thought that I don't need rules, I don't need disciplines, I don't need things that constrict me. And that was part of the kind of my initial shock when I became a monk. Suddenly I thought that, oh my God, I'm back in uniform. Actually, my first kind of, I remember that one of my first thoughts or experiences in wearing the robes is like, how can people wear skirts? It's like, and walk around wearing skirts and go up the stairs and downstairs and not stepping on your skirts and stuff. Also, anyway, so I was not into rules. I was not into uniforms. But now, actually, I find that it's actually pretty liberating. It's pretty. The fashion is red. I don't have to make any decisions.
Really let the wind blow through.
Yeah, yeah, although I think that normally I like to break the rules, here I don't feel the urge to do it. Haven't felt it yet.
What made you choose to learn Tibetan?
What made me learn Tibetan? Well, I started to get into Buddhism in the mid-90s, as far as I remember, and I left the army in 2000 or 2001 and went to India. And I met the person who became my closest teacher. And he just recently came out of Tibet and he spoke only Tibetan. So I had that kind of just wild thought. I mean, wild thought in the sense I didn't really think through the whole process. I thought that if I studied Tibetan, I'd be able to talk to him. It wasn't like, if I study Tibetan, I'd be able to study the Dharma seriously and become a serious practitioner and maybe a yogi in the future. It was more like, if I study Tibetan, maybe it will turn out well. So then I was in India and I met a girl and, as things happened, we became a couple and we ended up staying in India. And I was there for 2 years and I didn't find anything else that was drawing me to go back to software, being a software engineer, or going back to Israel, or getting married to her. This is what you said, I'm not marriage material. So I heard about the FPMT translators program and I had the time and I had the money. So I thought, why not give it a chance? So then when I finished, I was in India, I'd been in India for 4 years already, and I had a bit of, was enough. Thought that I need a break from India. And so I got an offer from Chenrezig Institute to take up the position of the interpreter here. And I thought, why not? I've never wanted to travel to Australia. It was never on my to-do list or my wish list, but thought that it's a good break from India, 2 years commitment. And then I thought I'd go back to India and do some more studies. But then I discovered that actually the opportunities for Dharma students in FPMT centers are much better than what you find in India, in the sense that in FPMT centers, and also compared to, I guess, to many other Dharma organizations, in FPMT centers, you have a very structured Dharma education program. So you have things for beginner, things for the intermediate level, things for advanced level. They teach you everything from A to Z, whereas I remember from being in India or attending other courses, sometimes you have to piece things together and try to sort out your priorities without having a good explanation. So, you get one teaching on shamatha and another teaching on wisdom, and then a weekend course on the 6 perfections, and you have to piece them together without having kind of complete picture. But then I found that the study program here at Chenrezig Institute was so suitable for people from our background. So after 2 years of doing that, I thought I'd be crazy if I leave and go back to India, because you can get so much, for people of our background, you can get much more in places like that. Not only here, I guess, that also when you look at other FPNT centers. And also in some sense, you can say that since it is guided by highly qualified lamas, then there is also some form of protection net, safety net. There are less chances for people to get lost in their spiritual path or to be misled by false teachers. So I thought that, it's adding a bit more to what you've asked, but I thought that at least that was my experience that so far. Yeah, I don't want to take one. Yeah. Tony?
Yeah.
This is the most interesting subject, talking about myself.
So very well.
So when I first met Buddhism at Tsongkhapa, and then for the period of time afterwards, for 12 months, really intensive retreat courses in a group from 6 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, basically for a year. Until I got really sick with typhoid fever and ended up in hospital. And then I looked at my life and into the future. And the last thing I thought what to do would become a monk. Because the reality was that Buddhism was really, really working for me in terms of bringing about a change in my life. And I knew if I didn't bring about a change in my life would be a disaster. It's very clear in about 3 years. And the evolution took place basically 4 things around that time into the future that I needed to do. One thing was to fix up the relationship with my parents. Resolve that. If I didn't resolve that, then Buddhism would be really wasted. Second thing, establish a relationship with a girlfriend and make it not too wrong. So that if she shoots through, I don't feel well upset or say goodbye, I wish you all the best, really accept it from my heart. And Buddhism couldn't help them with that. That was my life. I knew that was the basis in the future. Third thing was to hold down a job longer than 6 months. I had about 50 different jobs. Many crook employers, but the recognition that there was something wrong in me, I changed and that job had to introduce me into society, but make it meaningful. And the fourth thing was to become a part of my own society, to come back to it. So that was the important thing. So for the next 10 years, including 10 years most of the time I was here, most of the agents and also training in society. That was basically the direction I took. And amongst the things about monks, becoming a monk, was even the word monk sounds like a monkey. It's really weird. Also, as well, you can't have a relationship with a girlfriend. You can't resolve the problems with your parents. You're going to make it worse. As well as that, I wanted to continue smoking cigarettes. And on top of that, I knew that if you become a monk, people are going to ask you questions. And I had a terror of public speaking, and I didn't like to study. No question, why would anyone want to become? Why would I? So it was never a thought, right? But there was never a place, you know. By the time I was 40, on my 40th birthday, I went through a mini crisis. In Melbourne, for the first time, really, when I'm looking for a job, I can't find a full-time job. I never had problems finding jobs, getting jobs, but this time I couldn't find a full-time job. I could only find part-time jobs. And I was hoping for a full-time job. So right on my 40th birthday, this crisis arose. So what am I doing with my life? 40 years of age, and still I think something. 40 years of age, you're no longer young, but you're not old. So what am I going to do? And the things that were occurring before, the relationships, the dope, the alcohol, drugs, if they haven't worked the age of 40, it's one of the different outcomes. You sense that. It's a dead end. Sex is okay, but it's not going to really lasting happiness. So then it seemed that I had two choices, right? Not for me, not for anyone else. One was to become a family person. And that was a change in my mind about relationships. Before the relationship was going, she's there to bring me happiness. But with the Buddhist understanding of relationship, I started to see the idea of release with that partner. You know, so say, Buddhists are venerating partners are tolerant. And then also, and also the idea then, of course, then you really grow if you start to think about your partner, what does she want rather than what do I want? And that would be a really wonderful way to start to grow up. And then you have children, you have a basis for Buddhism, then you can maybe bring some positive influence which will affect the society. So I start to see that being in a relationship with someone could be really meaningful if you apply the Buddhist principles. So that was one option. The other option I saw was to become a monk because the benefit is you connect with an unbroken institution based 2,500 years old, based on non-harm and restraint. We only looked into our society, all the problems due to lack of restraint through harm in the society. And here it is, you're connecting with this unbroken institution which has existed since the time of the Buddha. Social movements come and go and they influence the society, but this institution, which is the longest existing institution, some people have said in the world, but I don't know, but it's certainly the longest based on non-harm and restraint. So to join into that is something really quite wonderful, the opportunity is there, the theory at least. And then also on top of that, of course, once you become a monk or nun, certain things are out, you know, no longer those intimate relationships, which could be nice, but they can also be a problem. And the complexities in having children also can be obviously really meaningful. But if you don't have, you know, if that's no longer a choice, then you don't have all those problems that often arise. Then the alcohol and the drugs, then it helps to the complications. And then because you've got these guidelines and you become a monastic, there's a guideline for living in general. It directs your behaviour in a positive way. So those are the two options, and I thought to myself, as work started to come in, that if I find connectedness with someone we have similar ideas, then maybe that will work. If not, at the end of the year when Lama's comes, I was in Melbourne, but when he was coming to Queensland, Chenrezig, I'll check with him, see if the ordination didn't find a girlfriend. I couldn't find a girlfriend, so second best option, become a monk. So he checked, and the observations came out, quite a lot of obstacles and stuff, but it turned out okay. So then, and because of that period of time, I think that I would never have, I had in my mind, if I take ordination, it is for life. There's no guarantee it will be for life. But I did really take that seriously at that time, that commitment. I did, as best as I could. And I think I was blessed because I had the good fortune to go to Nalanda in France for the first 4 years. Because that, if I'd stayed here, which I could have done with the old friends network, it would have been really difficult. Going to separating away to a monastery, to Nalanda, to join this new lot of brothers who I didn't know of different nationalities was a great blessing. And then, for me, then afterwards, monastery in Bendigo, and then back here. So it's been like that so far. So I'm still survived. I made it. not as long as Elsa, but not far. How many years?
34 in February. So you must be close to that.
29. 29 on the 12th.
Oh, 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days.
Wow.
So is it interesting?
How was it when you did come back from Nalanda? Because I was going to say, like, 40-year-old man in the early 90s in Australia, challenging.
Yeah.
And then you said you went there for that answer that. But how was it when you came back then?
Well, I came back to the monastery in Bendigo in Victoria. So both places were places of protection.
Yeah.
Nalanda is a protective environment. I wouldn't function very well in the city centre. Right. But in Bendigo, of course, it's a country centre. It was being established by Dr. Gatso at that time. And it was a very nice, pleasant place. You know, winter a bit cold, but it was a very nice place. And it was a nice place because also I could, you know, slowly do some teaching and lead meditation. So it was very nice. Yeah. And they're very supportive environment people. Yeah.
Venerable, did you learn to speak French when you were out there?
I can speak more French than I can Tibetan.
You can order a croissant.
See, I can get enough to get around. But just to say, at Nalanda, you see, the thing that one of the traps is if your first language is English, it's easier for you there than if your first language is French, because it's an international monastery. It's translated from Tibetan, the teachings are translated from Tibetan into English, and then the translations in Spanish and French are simultaneous with that. So people can be there and really lazy, but I did put some effort in.
So guess also has a couple of questions. So Gesha is wondering what are the benefits of being a monk from your personal experience, and if you've experienced any difficulties or issues in being a monk in this environment.
I guess the benefits, even just that idea, if the mind is thinking about the great blessing to be connected with an institution unbroken, connected with the Lamas, you know, and have the access to the teachings. Of course you do if you're not a monk, but somehow through that is really something positive for the mind, and also because the other options are out, you know, the family and so on.
So that's the benefit, that the other options are out.
Yes, yeah, I think so.
And have you experienced any difficulties in staying a monk, living as a monk?
Yeah, definitely experienced difficulties, but definitely but probably would have been experiencing difficulties anyway. And somehow this meaningful, and especially I guess, would be to remember that if I die and I'm still a monk, then it would be a bit like at least I was able to stay a monk. And it's, I think for me, also maybe it's not such a positive thing, but I don't think I would deal well disrobing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Some people can, but I don't think I would be able to do it. So it's not really an option. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Did you have any problems supporting yourself at the monasteries like Lama and Indigo?
No, back in those times, you know, I think one of the things that helped, Sandy, you know, because I had been around a period of time, including being director here, at least there was people had some knowledge, you know, and they know you're not crazy. Well, sort of, not right. but if you come in completely new, right, and then from Nalanda and so on, there may be some hesitancy in supporting you, you know, if you need supporting. But when I went to Nalanda, I had some money already saved, and there was no problem getting, you know, Lama Yeshe Sangha support, because I was able to live there, you know, harmoniously, I think, reasonably well. I didn't cause trouble. If you cause trouble, it becomes more of a problem. And that can be the case. People, monks or nuns in a monastery can be troublemakers. I guess we all are to some degree, and so that helped. And when I went to Bendigo, because I'd been around a while and I had some experience, I could do some teaching. And so they supported me. And I was when Gatso went away, I was doing the teaching, there's no resident teacher. So I was supported. And then later on, I had a couple of sponsors supporting me. And then in more recent times, my kind parents have been my generous benefactors.
What if we had your two options? We also have growth. And you had the year before growth came, and you had the year to think about what you wanted to do, and then if you did take the road, if you had a time or any time when you thought, oh my goodness, I don't think I should have done this?
No, well,
No doubt.
where something arose was that not then. Oh, look, it's almost like we could even put to the point, in the lead up to it, it's almost like if Lama's over had come along and said, no, mate, you can't take ordination. I could, oh, gee. It wouldn't have worried me, right? But once the decision was made, somehow in my mind, that's the decision, right? Because remember, this has been quite a while, 15 years before I met Buddhism to that time, was an evolution. But the one thing was that for monks, is that there's a full ordination. So I took a Getzel, you know, novice monk ordination first off in Nepal. And then 2 years later, I took full ordination at Lama Tsongkhapa Institute in Italy after I left from Nalanda. I went there to Nalanda to take full ordination with some monks. And that night, when I took that ordination, I started, oh, what am I doing? Because somehow the thing was, if you don't know, if you've never been a monk before, you don't know what it's going to be like, right? And so if the things are difficult, then it's understandable. But when you take full ordination, you already know what it's like to be a monk. And you don't have any excuses. And all of a sudden, just suddenly people said to you, well, you must be serious now. Well, I'm not that serious. Can we reverse it? But then I realised, no, you can't do that, stop that thinking. That's not good thinking, right? But there was a thought, right, that maybe I should have waited a bit longer. But I didn't, it was no point in regretting it. And in the long run, I think it was okay decision. So I think that's probably the only time. And if you're asking that question there, the regret is, I'm not too sure, Karen, if you're asking from a point of view, but often people will ask you that question, or people ask that question in relation to what they're saying. And I'm not saying necessarily you're asking, but what they're saying, do you regret that you didn't marry and have children? Okay, I'll leave it.
I wasn't even thinking regret, it was just like, oh my goodness, like, have I done something wrong? It wasn't regret.
No.
I wasn't thinking regret, I was just thinking like, oh my goodness, man.
Yeah.
What have I done?
No. I was pretty confident that I'd done my groundwork. I wanted Lama to guarantee I'd remain a monk, but there's no way he would. But all I could do was be responsible, done my groundwork, check, as he said previously to me. And then you had to make the jump. You had to make, had to make a decision.
And why do monks have more vows than we can hold that?
Why do nuns have more vows than monks? Maybe I've answered that question.
Only the 아니라 혼자 망해요. 성작하면 망해요. 요즘 생각이네.
그 좀더 되게 제발이었어. 좀더 되게 제발 되는 거야. 아니 리시 가는 정말이나 제발 되는 거. 망치시 리시 정사디 그나 아니 게노마 리시 정사디 게노마 bomkam스. 뭐 책도 실바. 아니 노트 치치디게 제발 찍는 노트 이시디 제발 이네 둘신 마무 차지해서 뭐 당분이 마무 소리 들리려면 봤어.
Do you know if they sing in the camera?
Sorry?
Can people at home sing in the camera, please?
No.
All right. So it's not a good way of sitting for translation. So anyway, so Geshe said that the origin of the vow and what we need to guard against, what we need to abandon, is quite different. The way that those things came about are different to other sets of teachings. So when you look at the teachings of Vinaya, the monastic code for monastics, the way that different rules came up is through different events occurring. So when you look at that literature, it said that when such thing has happened, a negative result came about. So then the Buddha made a rule prohibiting this type of behavior or this type of conduct. So then in relation to the codes for nuns, there were just more situations where things arose not in a beneficial way. And then the Buddha said that therefore one should abstain from this and that. So particularly there was one particular figure called Tsenakari? Bonkamo. One lady called Bonkamo, and she was a little bit naughty, apparently. So she had a tendency of always misbehaving. So, just because there were kind of more, certain situations, certain stories related to events that has occurred, then rules were formulated by the Buddha. So this is how it came about. So I guess of what Geshe-la is saying is that it wasn't like premeditated. It's more like this is how this set of rules have evolved in relation to certain things that have occurred at a time in which the Buddha was alive.
아니 영어 공부하는데 이제와 마라다스 예바다마스나 마라야서 디니 다 템바 샤 마시바이나 아니 제바 제바고 템바 인자 아니 템바 보고 조니 아니 제바디 다 디니 마도 단다바도 드로야노 다 마부 슈 차야이 난자를 얘가 도와서라
No, I didn't go too much. So at the time that the Buddha was alive, and a community has formed around the Buddha, and then certain events have taken place, and in relation to them, then the Buddha formulated rules for monastics. The one that was misbehaving from the male monastics perspective was mostly Gelong Cheka. That was his name, Gelong Cheka. So there were many rules that were formulated for monks on the basis of the things that he has done. Then for nuns, there were many rules that were formulated for them on the basis of what Bunkamo has done. It seems that they were, in some sense, competing with each other. Who could misbehave to a greater degree, and the one that won was Bunkamo. Yeah, she was better at misbehaving.
빙한도 신고도스러. 디마도지 마무지기 포모레 캬바테샤기로치. 서로도 싸워니는 말다스. 싸워니는 말이스러.
So it's good to know that, because often, particularly from our background, Geshe says that when we come across monastics rules and monks and nuns, it seems that in some sense the Buddha or Buddhism has a discriminative approach to nuns or to women in general, but Geshe feels that this is definitely not the case. So then if you're able to study Vinaya and you look at those accounts and stories that have taken place in India at a time in which the Buddha was alive and there was a community of monks and nuns around him, then it's becoming quite clear why certain rules were formulated when certain events took place. So this is, those stories and accounts are found in one of the volumes of the Vinaya. So Geshe said it's very thick. It has about 1,000 pages, and they're also very long, containing different stories of events that have occurred during that time. Yeah. So the next on the hotspot would be Venerable Elsa. But before that, I thought of ask Geshe-la if I can add something to what I've said, if it's all right. So it's kind of just another thing that I remembered. I remembered it when Tony was sharing his experiences. So I decided to become a monk, and I knew that I wanted to take ordination with Tai Sita Rinpoche, who gives ordination twice or 3 times a year, but I had to go to India to take ordination. So I've heard that there was an ordination happening in October, and it was maybe a couple of months before ordination that I heard about it. So then as it came to the crunch time, I started to doubt whether I was really Buddhist. In that it's easy to go, to go to teachings, to do retreats, to do meditation on like an automatic, how do you say, automatic driver, cruise control, yeah, autopilot. So then, just before ordination, I started to doubt whether I was Buddhist, whether I was actually trusting the three objects of refuge, whether I believed that past and future lifetimes exist. And it was sort of, I guess, a mini spiritual crisis, because I thought that if I don't believe in all those things, what's the point in becoming mundane? So took some time off, did some more meditations on all those different topics. And at the end, what I thought is that even before ordination, I couldn't get to a 100% certainty that I'm absolutely convinced that all of those things were true. But I thought that if it's 95+%, then I can still go ahead with ordination. So I thought that at the end, it was a good thing to be, to check whether kind of, if you're making that decision to become a monk and remain a monk for the rest of your life, you should really check whether you trust those very fundamentals. Anyway, that was the thing that I wanted to add, and now we're going to switch it on to Elsa. But before doing that, also Dennis here, and he has a couple of questions at the end. So Geshe will set up. We'll wait with your questions to the end. And
Sure.
Is it all right? Or? All right, cool. So I'm going to just switch on the camera.
So my story, I always, since the time I was a teenager, wanted to go to India, and I never really understood why. So you have to understand, I'm 66 years old now. So I was a child of the 60s and 70s. And these days you're spoilt for choice in terms of books on Buddhism. When I was a teenager, there weren't many books you read. I had an older brother who was also interested in spiritual path, and he would buy all the books. I didn't have any money. He would buy all the books that were available, but hardly anything on Buddhism. So my introduction to Tibetan Buddhism was from Lobsang Rampa. So those of you who are old enough will know who he was. He was a completely bogus Englishman who pretended that he'd been to Tibet and gone to all these exotic temples. And so one of my brothers and I used to fight to read the latest Lobsang Rampa book. So I had rather an exotic idea of what Tibetan Buddhism and Buddhism involved, and it involved miracles and all kinds of telepathic powers and astral traveling and all these kinds of things. But the only strong wish I had was to go to India, and I didn't understand it because I didn't relate to Hinduism as such. My oldest brother, he went and lived in an ashram in South India for 4.5 years, and he used to send me all these posters of Shiva and Ganesh and all that, and I was like almost repelled by them. I thought, I don't relate that, but I still had this strong urge to go to India. So I was a perpetual student for a while. I had 9 years of free, those were the good old days. We had free education in those days. So I did an arts degree because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school. And then I did a medical degree because some kind of practical thought that it's an occupation that's helpful to others, it's good to travel with, and it's also an occupation you do part-time and still support yourself. So I had a very brief and not very brilliant career as a doctor for 2 years, but all I was doing during that time was saving my money to go overseas and find what I was really looking for. So my one thing I knew I was going to do when I went overseas, and I went in early 1983, was I was going to do the Kopang course, because I had a close friend who'd done the Kopang course, and I thought, yes, that sounds interesting. And I'd almost come to a course here at Chenrezig Institute in 1981. I still remember the poster with the Lamas on it. It used to be down in the cafe. But I had this kind of, I had the thought that if I came and did that course, I wouldn't finish medicine. I was near the end of my medical degree. And so I made the choice that I would finish as a doctor and not come and do a course on Buddhism until I went traveling. So in 1983, I went in early in the year. And of course, the Kopan course is until November. So I met up with a friend and then we went trekking in Ladakh, which really blew me away. I just loved being with the Ladakhi people. And then I went to Dharamsala and was with the Tibetans. And the moment I got to Lower Dharamsala, which is very Indian, not so Tibetan, I felt completely at home. And so I just hung out, smoking hash and doing the things you usually do and when you're a backpacker or a traveler in India. And I went to a couple of classes at the library, didn't understand a word that was said, this, kind of body translation, didn't relate to it much. But then a friend said there was this course happening up the hill, and he said it's half the time of Kopan and half the price, a quarter the price or something. So I thought, oh, well, I'll try it out. So that was at Tachita Retreat Center. And I think I was voted the person least likely to take refuge of all the people there because I come from a scientific skeptical background, so I was questioning everything. And they were saying things like, they had a class on butter lamps. I went to butter lamps and, just because that's kind of exotic and interesting. And then the very pious Western student who was teaching it said, oh, and if you make the wick too long, you shorten the life of your Lama. And I was like, that's ridiculous, And so, and I had so much pride, I couldn't prostrate, like, really, until I took refuge. It was the first time, the refuge ceremony was the first time I ever prostrated, because before that it was like, no. But I just had certain experiences during the course, and all I can say, it felt like coming home. The ideas and the way things presented, the whole culture. And there were interesting things like, as a tourist, I'd actually had a donka made without realizing it was part of the monks and nuns' clothing. I just liked the look of this maroon donka, and I got it made in wool cloth. And I thought it was, and of course, all the students were going, oh, she must have some karmic connection with Buddhism. I just thought it was pretty cool. So what happened was I did my first Lamrim course, and within a week or two, I was working in that center. And I've never left the FPMT since then. It was like I really came home, this is my family. They're exotic and eccentric and often dysfunctional, but they're my family, and I kind of knew that. And at first I thought, oh, well, Buddhism is all very fine, but I think it's a bit extreme to become a nun. That's a kind of step too far. And, but it was just, I started living in the center, working in the center. My best friend became a nun, and we used to travel around and share rooms together. So it was just there was no epiphany. There was no great sort of insight but it just gradually, I was living in a Dharma center. I was taking the 8 Mana precepts almost every day. I was doing Dharma teaching. I was living like a nun, basically. But it was a leap of faith because I was very fond of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so the thought that I was saying no to that for the rest of my life was quite confronting. And that was a leap of faith for me. I just had a faith that there was something in this life that would satisfy me in a way that wasn't being satisfied in an ordinary lay life. And that has proved to be true. It hasn't always been easy. There are times when I think it's, because I would have said initially, oh, I couldn't live the rest of my life without having sex, but actually I think it's more intimacy or closeness with people. And I think as a monk or nun, it's an important thing to work out is how to have that closeness in a different way. You still need friendship, you still need warmth, you still need closeness with people, but you have to look for it in a different way. So yeah, I've not had any doubt about being a nun, except for one little bit rocky period, which I won't give you the details of because they're personal. But even during that period, I can't picture myself as a lay person. I sometimes try it, and it's like Tony was saying, I'd find it really difficult to be a lay person again. Somehow, after 34 years, thinking, acting, and there is an incredible freedom. And they say there are 2 types of people who take ordination. For some people, it's like you've entered a beautiful park. And for other people, you've entered a prison. And for me, it's always felt freedom, It's like, okay, we dress like this. We don't have to spend a single second a day thinking about clothing or, and sometimes when I spend time with lay friends, it's like, or I see relationships between people, I just think, oh my God, I'm so fortunate, that I never thought that was where my happiness lay, that some other person was going to be the one that supplied that happiness. Because I can honestly say I've never witnessed up close a relationship where I thought, oh, I wish I was in that relationship. Never, Whereas the kind of relationships you have as a nun in terms of friendships and relationships of devotion with your lamas, I think are the most special relationships. So in brief, that is my story.
So Elsa, I forgot to say that Geshe-la also wanted you to add if you had any difficulties or complications. I think that maybe you said that you had a rough period, but you don't want to go into that. But the benefits of being a nun, remaining a nun, would you say that what we've just said at the end would be a summary of the benefits of living as a nun?
Yeah, because it's a simple life and it's a good life, and it's a meaningful life. And I remember once His Holiness was asked about, kind of the key to happiness, or what makes you happy, when he was on a tour here. And he said, to be happy and useful is the meaning of life, And I feel as a monk or a nun, somehow, if you're not seeing it as a prison, if you're enjoying the freedom that comes, because we are free from a lot of things, you may think, oh God, you don't have money, you can't make your decisions, this and that. But actually, compared to most lay people's life, we have incredible freedom. Yeah, great.
Elsa, do you still practice medicine?
Oh God, no. I'd be a danger to others. No, I only ever did that 2 years, and
so you don't miss it at all?
No, it was never a vocation. It was like a very hard-headed thought that
It's a lot of effort though to do 6 years of this just to be a...
Yeah, I mean, study was never a problem for me. And, it was free at that time. The government even paid me to attend the last 2 years of my university life. Not much, but they paid me to. I mean, it was a different time. And I was just being quite hard-headed. And I think also trying to keep my family a little bit happy. Because when I left Australia, I actually thought in my head, I'm going to India for 6 years. My first stint over there was 6.5 years. But I told my mother that I was going to meet up with my boyfriend in England, who was a doctor, so she had all kinds of, I kept her happy, that's all I can say. And my parents, actually, I didn't have any problem in terms of being a nun. When I made the decision, which was just a natural progression, it didn't feel like any big deal. I was worried that they might think that the Mooney cults and things like that were around. So I spent hours composing this perfect letter, to explain. But what you have to understand is your parents understand you better than most people. They know you, better than most people. So after this agonizing over the letter, I just got this matter-of-fact reply from my mum was, oh yeah, well, you've been over there for quite a while now doing the same thing, and we wondered what it was going to lead to. And her only concern was that I remain a member of the family. That was the only concern, because there are certain religious cults where you have to cut off. And apart from that, she used to introduce me to all her bowling mates when, they lived in Nambour, my parents, before they died. And yeah, she was very supportive. She used to bake Anzac biscuits for the nuns. And yeah. So yeah, I never had any resistance from my family. But also there is a religious background. On my mum's side, I think I have 4 Methodist parsons in that family. So there is some karma for religion. Okay. I won't have to move because I can't see people. Yeah, just move the chair. I might just sit on the legs. Is it taller? Or Yaki's?
Okay. Do you want to? Can I get you?
Yeah. No, I'm good. Thanks. Okay, so I, from a very early age, wanted to ordain, and I was in a Catholic family going to a Catholic school. So guess what? I thought I was going to be a Catholic nun. And I remember I was about 4 years old, and when people say, and what are you going to be when you grow up, dear? A nun. And
Mr. Retrovision, who we hired the television from, said, "You'll change your mind." Well, I did. I became a Buddhist nun instead of a Catholic. So that obviously it took me a long time to get to that point. But I moved away from Catholicism. I mean, I hung around with the nuns for years. You couldn't go into the nunnery, but I believed this was my I felt like my vocation, right? And so nobody in my family had ever gone down that road in any religion. But anyway, so then I ended up as a teenager really going, there were things like I would question all the time. Of course, when I found Buddhism, it was like, oh, you're supposed to question. I was just in the wrong place, you know, because I had these untrained nuns. They weren't educated at that time. So, you know, you've got kids, bright kids saying, excuse me. And so I was a troublemaker, labelled a troublemaker. So anyway, so I ended up moving away from that. And so I guess I was attracted to Asian religions in general, Asian spirituality. And so I read about that. I found out all I could, which wasn't, when I reflect on it, a great deal, but, you know, many different ones. And we'd been encouraged since I was small to, you know, go into any church, go to any faith, explore the whole gamut, whatever, or none, you know. My mother had something, what was it? Anyway, she had these terms for people who had no faith. They were Caliphumpians, that's right. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, so it just happened that when I left school and went to university at ANU, I ended up close friends with somebody, ended up sharing a place with her who'd spent an exchange year in Thailand. And so I hung out with the Asian studies teachers and so forth, and was, you know, sort of would, anyway, I ended up going along to some Buddhist talks. I used to go to, even though it wasn't the degree I was doing, I was going to Asian studies lectures and so forth. It seems that's where I first heard the Lamas, but I really wanted to follow that path, but then I knew nothing, and so then I had some very dismissive thoughts like, what good is Buddhism? You know, people sit on top of mountaintops and meditate. How does that help the world? And so it was the 70s, it was the Whitlam era, and I was studying politics, so I took different action. Anyway, so I continued to be quite interested in spirituality, but I was also all singing, all dancing, growing up in a theatre family, and putting on musicals and doing all that sort of thing. So anyway, jumped to, I think, maybe by 1990, because people just kept taking me to Buddhist talks, and they always happened to be Tibetan Buddhist talks, which was interesting, just saying. And then by 1990, I decided to start going to somewhere a bit more regularly. I ended up going to Rigpa in Sydney for quite a while. And then I think at least by 96, when Kalachakra was on, and I remember that in Sydney with His Holiness. And I think I'd been around Vajrayana Institute a little bit before that, but not, you know, on the fringes, and friends were there and lived there and things like that. And I actually lived with someone who was doing the newsletter and blah, blah. So I was sort of around that milieu, and then it just grew, you know. I mean, I think that was the first time I thought, yeah, I want to become a Buddhist nun, was at His Holiness teachings then. And it just kept coming back every so many years. And until it got so strong, there was no other option. In my mind, no other option. And unfortunately, I was in a relationship at that point, because many other times I hadn't been in a relationship. It would have been so much easier. So I spoke to this senior nun, and she was checking up all the questions that you check up, and then said, so how ready are you? If Geshe came downstairs right now and you know, and we went and said that you want to ordain, would you be ready? Well, at that point, Geshe-la came downstairs and walked past the window, and I'm like, that's close. But I made a commitment to talk to him before the end of the year, and it was right at the end of the year that I eventually talked to Geshe-la. And that was the end of 2005. I think what had happened in that year was, you know, there were many things that happened that just made it clear that this was my path. But I did have to end this relationship, but I hadn't ended it. I went to India for the Kala Chakra there with His Holiness, because at Amaravati, and I had no other thought apart from ordination. And the only thing that stopped me, like Venerable Roger, I mean, I sort of knew now because he'd come up to me and say, have you got a question? Oh, no. Whereas, you know, it was right there. Anyway, so I just had this thought that I hadn't ended the relationship, and my partner had said, don't you get ordained in India. Like, I hadn't actually talked about ordination, but we lived in different cities. So when I was in Sydney during the week, I was always at VI, and my partner was living in Melbourne. So it was quite convenient that have a very part-time relationship. Anyway, so I had to end the relationship, and then, Rinpoche came. I mean, Geshe Samta, when I spoke to him, said, oh, when Rinpoche comes, he will ordain you. And I said, oh, but I'm not ready. And he said, you've been thinking about it for what, 45 years? I'm thinking, you've thought about it long enough. Well, I wasn't thinking about it all that time. I was partying. So anyway, so it just got like that. And of course, Rinpoche came, and then people prepare you and they say, look, you might be told, not in this lifetime, you might be told, you know, go away for a few years or do that, not go away, just do this and we'll see how it is in a few years' time. And indeed, other people were told that at the time, but Rinpoche said, okay, so New Zealand, 2 weeks. So I had to go back to work and tell them and so forth. So, yeah, so then 2 weeks later, I was all ordained, or 3 weeks, or however many weeks it was eventually that, while Rinpoche was in New Zealand, I took ordination with Rinpoche then. And for me, I've never had a doubt. It was like my only thing to myself is, next time, don't take so long. But having said that, all my experiences of life, because if I were to think, like, certainly I feel like, I'd done enough of exploration, research, of all other things. And I felt like, been there, done that, do not need to do that again, do not want to do that again, right? And I still feel like that. So the one thing that I had to give up was the singing and dancing. And I'd already done that a year earlier because, you know, just there'd been little signs, and I just sort of thought, okay, we'll stop that. And it's just like it was obviously a very gradual process, very long process. And I made before I ordained, even though you read about everything, you talk to everybody, you have all your questions answered, it's still, you never know what it's going to be like until you're in the robes, right? And even then, you just never know what it's going to be like. But I made this 2 commitments. One, that I don't care if I'm destitute on the street, which has not been unfamiliar to me in life. I have not ever been destitute on the street, but, not coming from a wealthy background, anything like that. So it was like, I'm going to stay in the vows. Well, it's never got anywhere near that, right? And I made the other commitment was to always be living in a centre consecrated by the Lamas, His Holiness Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe. So that's my commitment, not to live anywhere else but that. And I think that has helped me keep the ordination, because especially that, not that I feel like it's been a struggle, but in Sydney, I was a lot of times solo nun, and you're there with one Geshe. And I mean, no question about the Geshe, but they're like a Tibetan male. who's had a different experience of ordination than you have. And so you really, anyway, it was good grounding for me. And Rinpoche just said, stay there and study with Geshe-la. And apart from the fact I'm not a good student, I stayed there and went to all the classes. And then now I've been here. So that's me. Okay.
Church 땅보다 아니 내가 아니 제니 추부터 그렇지만 굉장히 제도가 Lama 세대야 아니 제니 굉장히 지주 가져 세디 추럽게 마셔 세디만 제
So Geshe-la also wanted to slot in at least one question, his question. So having become a nun, when you think of what's the purpose, benefit, reason for staying a nun, don't think about next life. When you think about this life, just in terms of this life, you don't have to turn it into kind of a religious or spiritual discussion, just in terms of what benefits, purpose it gives you in this life. Could you share some?
Sure. Thank you, Geshe-la. When I first spoke to this senior nun, she actually said because I was so absorbed in me becoming ordained, that, or my wish to become ordained, she said, oh, you don't want to wait till you're too old to be of benefit to others. And that was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what we say. That's what we do. We say it in our prayers. And I think that's always been something in my life anyway, because I was always involved in social justice and anyway, it's been my life. But I think, to really, like others have said, be not focused on relationship, not focused on trying to spread yourself around, keep that one happy and that one happy and whatever, and making, I feel, more available to more people. And I guess I was also given the message early on, you're going to teach. Well, I sort of grew up teaching, from a young age, so various things. So that was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I guess for me, it's to, when we hear the Buddha's teachings, it's like, at first, you feel like, oh, well, I've wasted a lot of my life, but I haven't, because it seemed that Rinpoche is very skillful, and everything that you've done before that I thought, I won't need that anymore, I won't need that anymore, has all been part of my journey in ordination. It's like Rinpoche sort of brings it all together or provides that opportunity. And I've had opportunities as an ordained person I never would have imagined. Like I thought, you get ordained, you stay in one place, you're never going to travel again. And I've traveled a lot. Well, the only thing that stopped me traveling has been COVID. So that, it's just not realistic. So I think, I know that, like being in Sydney, when I was in Sydney, and you just go to the shopping centre, and I learned that you go to the supermarket, allow time that someone will come up and ask you a question. It doesn't always happen, but to be available to others, not necessarily of any religious background whatsoever, but that warms my heart if people say, they want to have a chat or whatever, I didn't know you were just around the corner, etc., etc. So, yeah, I think that for me is what gives me a sense of value, of making the most, like His Holiness of sort of providing an avenue. Pre-ordination, I was told, people may not know what you represent, but that you represent something spiritual, so it connects them to their something spiritual within them. So, and again, not being holy, but having that heart connection. And one time in Sydney, this woman chased me up the escalator, and she'd only been in Australia about a month, and said, wow, because she came from China and she was Buddhist, and she hadn't known of it. It hadn't met any Buddhists. And so she ran up the escalator behind me just to find that out and so forth. So that was nice. And then, yeah, I think, yeah, just doing, I guess on two sides, one, trying to benefit others as much as I can, and two, but I think this isn't necessarily, it's not unique to ordination. You know, people talk about difficulties in ordination, and Rinpoche said you'll have difficulty in ordination. So I go back to the senior nun, and Rinpoche said, oh, I'll have difficulties. Oh, everyone has difficulties, you know. Lay women, lay men, you know, nuns, monks, geshis, lamas, they all have difficulties, right? So it's just, I think, I know that when I'm not working on my mind, I can't blame it on anyone else. Oh, my family are taking me away, something. It's all about me. So that's been really good for me. And what's been good being here, not saying it's rosy, but that being in a monastic community, like having spent the first 12 years of my ordination, not in a monastic community as such, but living as a monastic. And I'm not, you know, there were other monastics around and we gathered, and especially the nuns. But yeah, it's a different environment, and trying to get a sense of, well, what is monasticism in this sort of environment? Not trying to get a picture of that, but just how do I live in vows on a daily basis? And whatever level of vows we have, everybody, it's a challenge, right? Well, anyway, for me it is.
Thank you. It's a beauty difference.
All right. So yeah. So Geshe wanted to then put Dechen
On the spot.
on the cross.
It's funny you should say that.
Do you wanna sit here? Do you wanna sit there?
I'll sit just carefully, but not on her. Shall you?
And also not on the tube.
Yeah, and also not on the tube. Whatever. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So Geshe said that since we're running a little bit out of
Keep it short. Keep it simple.
Keep it, yeah. Simple.
Yeah. Well, I was brought up by a minister of he was a Presbyterian minister, the Uniting Church, and my father, I was the firstborn, and he wanted a daughter, and he was going to call her Mary, and here I am. So I had a really close relationship with my father, and I think that sort of made my relationship with my mother difficult, because I think I have had a difficult relationship with my mother. But, you know, I can remember at a very young age, you know, some missionaries came to the church, and I want to do that. I want to do that. And anyway, we went over to the States, and Dad had got together a really good youth club and a Christian club, and I was really, really right into it. And, you know, spirituality was a big part of my life. But then when I moved back to Australia when I was 17, and I think, I mean, when I look back at it, I've suffered with depression for most of my life. But when I came back from the States, back to Mount Gambier, and I was just no friends around, completely new place. I was thrown into I'd finished year 10 in the States, and I was thrown into year 11 in Australia, and that was meant to year 11 and 12 are your glory years in America, your junior and your senior year. But here in Australia, you know, I was back in the day with a year 12 when it was the final exam meant everything. Well, it was just a big shock to me. And I really struggled emotionally, and my faith, my Christian faith, just, you know, I used to pray every night, please, Lord, you know, help me with my difficult time. There was just nobody help. Nobody was home. He wasn't there. I was being ignored. It was really quite devastating. So, you know, it got to the point where I said, well, if I don't hear from you tomorrow, Christ, that's it. You're not going to hear from me again. Well, I didn't hear anything, sadly. And And yeah, I think it was a really difficult time in my family. My father was in hospital, and I was giving my mother a lot of strife, and apparently I was on Serapax. My mum would ask me, have you taken your tablet yet, darling? I don't remember that part of that time of year at all, but yeah, it was really a tough time, year 12, where your whole future was based on one exam. Like, oh my gosh, how stressful is that? Thankfully I passed, and I went to university, and I was so pleased to get away from my straight Christian upbringing and got right into the sex, drugs and rock and roll, dove straight in, and didn't talk to my parents for 8 years, which was probably pretty shocking, really, when I look back on it. It's the suffering that I would have caused them. And, my life was just like, where was my life going? And I was still dealing with my depression, but it was always stuff out there. It was always stuff out there. It wasn't me. And I ended up having, I got into the women's movement, and they sort of told me I could do anything I wanted to do. And anyway, I had this boyfriend, and I said, if we go through with this sex now, we're going to have a kid, because I sort of knew it was that time of the month, and I wasn't, no contraception at that stage. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll be right with this, whether he stays with me or not. And so anyway, I ended up having a kid, and it was just, my pregnancy was horrible. It was real closest I've come to committing suicide. And the father, his answer was to go down to the pub. I got no affection or intimacy from him. The relationship was just, I don't know. I was really silly. And so anyway, I had this beautiful baby boy, my son Chris, and which was an amazing experience. I loved giving birth. It was just the best thing, amazing. Giving birth is an amazing experience as a woman. And then I left the father within four months. I knew I was either going to be a mother or sort out this relationship. I didn't have the energy to do both. So I went back to when my parents were living in Victoria. And then that's when my sister came back from Asia. And that's where she had gotten in touch. She'd been up to Dharamsala, and she'd gotten into Buddhism. She'd been to Thailand and went on a Vipassana retreat. And, and I was just a mess by that stage. Just, I look back on it, and I had postnatal depression. And, I was a registered nurse by that stage. I did manage to do something useful with my life, get my registered nursing certificate. But I was really, really lost. I was just really, really lost. And I had found something, the relaxation response. And that was this book, and that sort of just taught me basic mindfulness, breath awareness. And that helped a bit. And then, Wendy came back from the States and introduced Buddhism to me in Tara Institute in Melbourne. Well, I felt somebody had given me the key to happiness. It was just that profound for me. Somebody had given me a key to happiness. I went down to Geshe Doga, and I started attending his teachings. I met the Venerable Thupten Gyatso, who has been a he was a lifeline for me, really. And it's through the teachings, they began to teach me techniques to help me deal with the emotional turmoil in my brain, in my mind. And, my sister, she was into it as well. And so, just all those basic thought transformation methods, the 7-limb prayer, just such useful Buddhist tools to me in settling my mind and developing some peace. And I remember, and then, oh, silly me, I had another baby. I don't know what I was thinking. This Tibetan guy I met in Adelaide, and he asked me back for dinner. Well, I thought that's a nice idea. It wasn't just dinner, was it? No. And he didn't know how to use a bloody condom. Anyway, I've got a beautiful half Tibetan daughter. She's just amazing. Very fortunate to have her in my life. And so, you know, it's back then I used to sort of wistfully think, oh, geez, it would be nice to be ordained. I'd be able to, you know, practice and not have to be a single mother and look after these kids and go to work and, you know, but no, that wasn't my life. And so I was a single mother, and neither one of their fathers had much to do with them at all. And my parents sort of told me from the start that they're not one of these grandparents that will be doting on the grandkids. So I really did bring up 2 kids on my own. I met a lovely guy who I had a relationship with for 20 years, and he was a great lover. I was really, really fortunate with that. But you know, the sex, drugs, rock and roll, and having kids and everything like that, you know, it's all a dead end. It really is a dead end. It's a dead end. You get to the end of it, and it stops. You know, I mean, I remember you're sort of experiencing something really wonderful. Is that it? Is that it? And you know, Buddhism sort of assured me that there was more than that. I mean, not that I've experienced more, but I'm trying. I'm working on it. This life, just. And so, you know, I used to go to 96, I was ordained. I did Kali Chakra with His Holiness. I was so fortunate there, and got my, started my regular commitments, and then various other lamas, Kurti Senchip Rinpoche, Lama Zopa. You know, I've looked around, but I keep on coming back to FPMT. We are so fortunate with Lama Zopa, and I never quite got this guru devotion, because my father always said to me that to be independent, not to be a sheep, don't follow along with the crowd. And so I really struggled with this guru devotion. And then one day I just sort of got it. And this was sort of probably about 7-8 years ago. It was probably not the last retreat, but the retreat before that. And I remember Rinpoche was walking down, and, you know, I've never been very good with timing. Timing is not one of my fortes, as you all know. I'm always running late. And so Rinpoche was walking down, and so that was it. I sort of went up and I did my 3 prostration. I said, oh, Rinpoche, will you be my guru? Achar, he says, Achar, Achar, and just walked on. But that was fine. He did say yes. And then another retreat. I've been to all his long retreats in Australia, and we're just so fortunate to have. He's just such a precious teacher, and what he has given to us here in Australia through FPMT and the connections to the Dalai Lama, and you know, to Tony and Elsa. I know Tony and Elsa both from the back, and you have both been inspiring people to me. We never wanted to give Tony up in Bendigo while he came back to Chenrezig. Remember, we were all quite disappointed that he left us. But yeah, and then one day Rinpoche, I was walking back with Rinpoche from the retreat. You know, Chokila very kindly said I could walk with Rinpoche back. And that's what he said to me. He said, oh, when are you going to become ordained? He said to me. And I'm there, whatever you say, Rinpoche. Yeah, good idea. And then he said, oh, when you die. And oh, right, okay. And I thought, you know, typical Rinpoche sort of answer. And so then I knew I was going to become ordained from then when he said that to me. And then I saw him at Lardo. I went to Lardo to do my first retreat, and Rinpoche arrived the day after. And that was not my plan, but that was just the way it worked out. So we hung out with Rinpoche for about 3 weeks in Lardo, 2-3 weeks. And I asked them then again, you know, are you sure ordained in this life? Because I thought, me ordained, you know, I might give FPMT a bad name, I thought. I might end up being like that nun who broke too many rules and I had to make more rules about. Yeah, I thought, I said, are you sure, Rinpoche? And he goes, yes. Because I'm a registered nurse and I loved my career. I've had a great career looking after aged care people. It's really, but no, he said, yes. And then I went to Vajrayogini in France. And I was really very unwell there. And it's probably the closest I've come to dying. My heart was almost close to fibrillating and my blood pressure was really low. And, you know, I thought a cardiac condition was building up on me and had thought that for a couple of years. And I thought it's in the family and I've been working really hard and Rinpoche pushes you really hard on these retreats. And, you know, I walked back and my sister was quite worried about me. She could see I wasn't well, but I didn't want to make a fuss. Don't worry anybody, I'm all right sort of thing. And then, she's, and like I got a bit of a crushing feeling here in my chest. Oh, all right, she says, that's it. And raced off and got the doctor and I got these gorgeous French meds came and I almost had a heart attack then. and so I ended up in the hospital. Very good. The French medical system, excellent. And so anyway, I came back and I said to Rinpoche, I said, should I get ordained now, Rinpoche? Do you think? He says yes. And he gave me a date and I ordained with 8 other people and I was going to head down to Bendigo, but there was no room for me in Bendigo. And Pallion just said, stay here. And you know, Elsa was really supportive too and sort of having car difficulties. And then I ended up in Hatwan. I mean, I'm not going to leave. I'm sorry, guys, until I've been so fortunate. And I must admit, I'm really loving being here. And even though, you know, I still struggle with my depression, and dear old Geshe-la sees me crying and carrying on. And he has been so kind. Many other Geshes, I wouldn't say many, but other Tibetan people have found it really difficult when they see me, quite emotional. But Geshe-la has the biggest heart and he really looks after me. And I just feel so blessed being here at Chenrezig. So blessed. I was even just thinking today with Lama Tsongkhapa, this is what I've wanted to do on these holy days, spend the whole day doing practice and hanging out with my mates, with me red mates, with the red team. And that's what we have done today. And it has just been so special. So that's my story.
So Geshe-la has one short question for you.
Short.
So, you know, it hasn't been long since you became a nun. Then, you know, normally we say that when you become ordained, you do it with a mind thinking that I want to spend most of my time in studying, practicing, and so forth. So then, having become a nun, and this is what you do now, do you sometimes think that I wish I had done it earlier?
Oh, yeah, for sure, absolutely, yes, Geshe-la, definitely, yeah. No, I just love my life now, absolutely love it. I feel so blessed, and you know, from the bottom of my heart to you all here at Chenrezig, and to the wider community, thank you so much for making it possible for us to be here as ordained. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Right, there could be questions.
Oh, maybe.
So, although we're running a bit late, we hope that it's all right with you guys. I think that it's pretty interesting so far. So we also have some new members of our community, people that have 4 nuns that have been nuns for a few months now. So
6 months.
6 months.
Nearly 7.
Thumbs up. So has it gone quickly?
Yes.
So I wanted to kind of maybe quickly, if you could we could go one by one and you could share briefly your experiences, if you kind of, how do you find your time so far being ordained, being here in the community? How has it affected your life? Who wants to volunteer to be first? Yeah. I can just point the camera at you if you don't mind.
Wangwell was first ordained.
Right. You were first in line. So I'm just gonna.
By 3 minutes. They all count.
When I went to preschool, I told my mum I wanted to be a teacher. I did. Travelled all around the state, little country towns, loads of alcohol, loads of parties. It was a good life. Then I got sick and had to ill health retire. And at some point, I had tiny breast cancer. So I hooked up with Karuna to do some meditation. I met a couple of nuns. That was fine. Then Venerable Sultram, I went to a teaching with her. She walked in and I just said, in my mind, I thought, I'm going to wear those clothes. I'd been around Buddhism for less than a year, just a few months, but I just looked at her and thought, I'm going to wear those robes. And then Geshe-la was talking about his life as a monk. And he said, this is a bit later, he said he couldn't think of a better way to have lived his life. And I thought, I can't think of a better way to spend the rest of my life. What better thing could I do?
Yeah.
And that's still true. I can't think of a better way to be living my life. It's not easy when your health's not 100% and you live on a mountain. You know, it can be hard. Small hill. But everyone's just so supportive. When you're knocked out in bed for a week because you've overdone things, everyone's just there for you. You have access to the teaching. I still get a buzz if I see one of the other nuns walking up from Tashi House or something. I just get a little buzz when I see these nuns walking past, and I think, yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. So not a lot of time to have anything to say that's really, really good or really, really bad. And particularly this year, that's just been really, really different. But I think COVID's all right because I ordained in the middle of COVID. So, no complaints from me. Yeah. So that's, as I said, not been here long, but yeah, it's been pretty good. And I honestly cannot think of a better way to spend my life.
Yeah.
So just to ask one more question, but just to fill in a kind of couple of details. So Lama Zohar was supposed to be in Australia earlier on this year, and there was a plan for ordination for quite a few people. So unfortunately, was it this year?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes, it's been a long year.
Yeah, it's been
Been very long.
Unfortunately, things have gone a little bit astray. So we had a group of 4 dedicated people that really wanted to get ordained. So just to get them a level of ordination called Lama Rapchun, and we're still waiting for Lama Sovereign to come here again to Australia to conduct the Getsu ordination. So I guess the question is, do you feel a sense of urgency? Are you really really looking forward for as soon as possible for Lama Tsogyal Rinpoche to come to Australia and to Daniel Zagetsu?
Yes and no. I'm really happy and comfortable where I am, and I'm learning so much. And in some ways, it's not going to make a difference. I still have access to the teachings and being around all these wonderful people. But I think, as Tony said, with taking full ordination, I think when you take each step you take, it deepens your commitment and your connection. And so, yes, I am looking forward very much to when I can get that next level of ordination.
All right, so Yanchen, you're on the hotspot now.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
If you would if it's all right, if you
I'll come over, because you'll need to operate that for me.
It's just putting it on.
I'm one of those people who did come to the Dharma through a personal crisis. I was married to a biker and did a lot of partying and carrying on. And then he got sick and we knew he wasn't going to get better. And that was what brought me to the Dharma. And he's passed away. And I kept thinking, I was still young. I was only 44 when I was widowed. And I was thinking, well, what do I do with the rest of my life? What's a meaningful way to live it? And what would make me happy? And I couldn't think of any of the usual sorts of things. Didn't work, like owning a house or having another fella, or none of that did it for me. And I ran away and lived as a traveller for a while, and I found here. And then through discovering Buddhism and getting over the sort of block about that I was lacking in having some special quality that would enable me to become ordained, I thought, no, this is it. And I feel like this is my spiritual home as well. So I'm very happy and grateful to be ordained and to be living in community. I think that's it.
Okay, before you close, halfway.
Take it over to me.
One small question.
Jessica has a small question.
One little question.
So Geshta is not letting anyone go without.
That's fine.
Question for you is, before you decide to become a nun and then join the community, you have a certain idea of how it's going to be, and you probably think that it's going to be fulfilling, it's going to make me happy, that's going to be really the thing that will make me really happy. But then you join a place like that, you join the community. So Geshta is wondering whether your experience is very different to your expectations, in a sense that, maybe once you thought that it's going to be a great idea, and then you join the community and think that, oh, it's so difficult to be part of the community. So do you have such experience?
No. It is different than how I thought it would be. There's a lot more cleaning and hard yakka than I thought there would be. But other than that, and I'm not quite sure what sort of nun I'm going to be yet. I think I'll be I'd be comfortable being someone's Dharma buddy, Dharma friend. But yeah, I'm not sure yet. I'm
I'm ignoring you.
I
Sorry.
know you are.
But yeah,
For the microphone, Choki's in the background saying, teacher, teacher.
I'm not sure I have those qualities, but we'll see how things go.
Yes.
No, you can't get off looking at.
That was for me, not for you.
No, it was for you. He was looking at you.
So rather than thinking that, I need to become a teacher in the future or something like that, Geshe feels that it's like it might occur as a natural process of evolution when you think that, well, I became ordained, now my role is to study and practice. So if you do that well, then at some point, maybe naturally, you would either gravitate toward a situation like that, or you'll be asked to do something. But Geshe doesn't feel that it has to be like a premeditated plan, like something that would naturally arise.
Yeah. Not off look yet.
So we have, of course, some new members to our community, and Geshe's idea or wishes, motivation was to be helpful as much as he can. So, not only to the new members of our community, but also to other people. People sometimes have certain hopes or expectations, wishes for Geshe to relate to them, or for you to relate to him in a certain way. And Geshe also has the same hopes. So, of course, sometimes it's difficult with communication with language because Geshe is not a good English speaker yet, but he's working in his English, and he really hopes that he'll be able to be more useful in the future.
Come on, Yoshi.
No stress.
Yeah, just breathe.
Yeah, you can sit here if you want.
You have to change the camera again.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I've been here and that before becoming a daughter, a sister, an auntie, a great aunt, a mother, a grandmother.
What?
Yeah.
Grandmother?
My grandson, my grandson is 13 in May.
I wanted to say that, you must have been a child bride, but maybe it's not the right thing to say.
I was young, but not as young as some people. I've been a wife and a couple of times, but in all of that, my family very supportive through this part of my life as well, and they are my family. But becoming a nun has certainly been the best part of my life. And Geshe is like a father and very, very kind, so very kind. And to ordain us at a time when we sort of all were hoping to get ordained, and it sort of all went really quickly, but it didn't. It went right up through the roof. And there was an added bonus. We had an extra one on board that we didn't know about. So I've now got more sisters, bigger family, beautiful family. And yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit lost for words, really. I don't do this. All these eyes staring at me. It's a bit difficult, but I just love it every day. Every day is a new day. I follow the lead of the Lamas and the Masters and our dear Geshe and pray first thing in the morning. Grateful for the life that we do have. And it will continue, and my hope that I will be ordained life after life. So it's just taken so long to get here in this life. But there we go, I'm here. And I'm happy.
So Geshe, of course, knows you before you were a nun, because you were part of our community for some time on the work exchange program in other worlds for some time. So having become a nun, Geshe sometimes looks at you and your facial expression is like always happy. So has things gone better for you? Has your mind been made more happy and just better since you became a nun?
Yes, definitely happier. Busier, my mind now. I mean, you think head chatter before, now there's just lots in the sense that there's just so much more. And the teachings, it's amazing. Everything relates to the teachings. Everything we do belongs there. Every time we think things, we come to a teaching and we get a lesson on it. It's like, wow. Yeah, so learning a lot, studying hard, but definitely happier. Definitely happier. Yeah.
It's very interesting because always when I was in some courses or like there was a discussion group and there was like we talk like one person other and I was always like praying, may I be the first or second, and then like and today I think it's my karma. But what I would say about being a nun and like when I was listening all of you and talking about your past and being like living before ordination, I just feel like for me it's like a past life, the life which I live before ordination, even if it's like 6 months, but I feel it's like always. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it's very amazing, but looking back and always trying to find what is the right what is the best, and never be satisfied with what I found. And now it's like I found the most precious jewel, and every day I feel so grateful for all causes I created in my past lives, that I now experience this amazing, most meaningful life. And it's sometimes really hard to find the words, because I cannot compare to anything. Like, and I can say that since 2017, since I met Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I just see the changes in my life. And I just remember before I met Lama Zopa Rinpoche at Kopan, maybe a few weeks before, I was talking with one nun there, and I really wish to find a guru. I really wish to find a teacher who will guide me on the path. And she said, pray for it. And these words so strongly stay in my heart. And I really prayed even before I really wished for it, but it was so strong how she said this. And I know that nothing happened without a reason. And I know that I was in the right time, in the right place. And and just meeting Rinpoche was, I think, the biggest blessing. And then all what happened since then till now, coming here and being close to Geshe-la, it was just so inspiring for me to be close to such inspiring teacher, kind and open for everybody. And it was not like that he pushed me like, you have to become nun or something like this. It was really like, it's a really good and happy life, the best life. And what Geshe-la said at the beginning, when Venerable Elsa say, it was actually when we had the ordination, and then you came to each of us and you say, it's not always easy life, but it's the best life. And these words stay also with me. And I 100% can say that even if it's 6 months, but I feel it's like, always. And I can say it's really the best life and most meaningful life and happy life. And even some obstacles come, or the mind becomes sometimes crazy, but the Dharma is the best medicine, and our teachers, the best doctors. So I think, I feel very, very, very fortunate and grateful.
So, Ankuben had fantastic hair. Before she became a nun, and yes, in the process of ordination, the ordination master cuts the top, the first half of the hair in the crown, and Geshe-la was worried that you had such fantastic hair that he's gonna get it. Do you get angry when you cut your hair?
Koppel's a hairdresser. She was
it was really interesting feeling, because of course we prepared ourselves a few days before that it will happen. But then when Geshe-la shaved my hair, and after shaving hair, and I touched my head. And it was not just the hair was gone, but something inside was like, this feeling was like, I felt very like free, and I was just very touched by this feeling. It was really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I feel some kind of is in a good spot if you get.
Thank you so much.
So, Ben Gesler is wondering what to do now. So Ben had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask Gesler, but obviously, kind of we now know it took more time. So Gesler was wondering, if he if we go with your questions now, he wants to answer them at length, rather than just kind of keeping it short. So is maybe suggesting that you come another time, and you will make special time. We can do it kind of. No. Yeah. Can you come next Thursday? You're doing well.
Yeah.
There's a future for you in the industry. Yeah. So Gesler said that first of all he apologizes for that because it took some time, but he's wondering if we can do it maybe next Thursday or yeah, kind of same time. Yeah. So he just said I kind of forgot to say that you brought the equipment and you set it up and practice run. Okay. Well, you know now what works and what doesn't work. Probably what doesn't work is questions and answer with monastic. So what we can do is I'll, you tell me what you wanted to ask Gesler, so I'll get, I think I have an idea, but we can speak about it more. Because Gesler said that if I tell him the questions, he'll be able to prepare well rather than kind of be put on the spot and kind of then after that thinking that I should have said this or I could have said that. So we'll give him enough time to think about it. So thank you very much, people. It's not over yet, by the way. There's still something happening after this session. We have light offering at the garden for those of you who want to stay. But Gesler wanted to say that thank you very much for coming and participating in that session. Gesler feels that it was interesting and probably fruitful for most of us. Yeah. Thank you. So what we'll do now is we'll go down to the garden. We'll have light offering. Do we know what we're doing? Apart from light offering? All right. Do we have lights?
Yeah, they're down there.
All right. So we have lights down there. All right. So something is happening. We'll try, by the way, for people at home, we'll try to put it on Facebook so that you can also participate if you're a Facebook person. Let's go and do it. Thank you very much. Peace.
Tony traditionally, Tony will do the light offering.
Do we need to take the like books down with us?
Page 51.
Which book?
Yeah, silver. Okay, so if you take the silver book with you.
Yeah, so please take your silver book with you if you are staying with us. Thank you, people.